Hey, it's me, the soy pill. Comrade Kamala told me to go to a Trump rally at the recent presidential debate.
I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch.
And when she did, my brain chip activated and compelled me to go to Tucson, Arizona for the Trump event, as well as the Blaire White meet and greet in Phoenix. Now, out of respect and privacy and ignorance of the law, I didn't record most of these interactions, but I will be providing visuals and the occasional photo and video to stimulate your brain-rotted minds. And I know I joke around a lot, but I promise you, everything I'm about to tell you is 100% true. This all happened. I'm not embellishing. Surprisingly, one of the craziest encounters was not at the Trump rally, but on my flight to Phoenix, where coincidentally, I was seated directly next to a white nationalist. Now, how did I know that he was a white nationalist? Well, I suspected he was conservative based on his Guy Fieri look and baseball cap, and because I saw him reading libs of TikTok on his phone. But once we started talking and he learned why I was flying to Phoenix, he revealed to me that he was an avid watcher of white nationalist Nick Fuentes, and then proceeded to look at my nose and cheeks and facial symmetry to determine my ethnic origin. For those of you who don't know, this is called physiognomy, and it's similar to the race science phrenology. So we chatted a bit about politics, and I didn't push back too much because I was stuck on a plane with him and I didn't want to start a fight. But surprisingly, this guy was really charming and cordial, despite spouting numerous racial slurs, saying that Zionists control the West, and reminding me that he was not a bad guy every time he brought up his past infidelity. And things escalated when he ordered us 2 shots of whiskey and a coffee each, which I accepted to be friendly. And when the waitress asked if he wanted ice, he placed her hand on his bicep and said something along the lines of, "Do we look like pussies who need ice? Go on, feel." And so the alcohol led to a heated back and forth about whether or not Congress people should be allowed to have dual citizenship with Israel. He said, quote, "No man can serve 2 masters." And my slight pushback was that you could totally use dual passports to travel more or any other benign reason, and that you could simply judge people on their votes if you were worried about dual allegiance. And it was at that point that he began to question whether or not I was Jewish. Anyway, it was the most entertaining flight that I've ever had, and that guy was by far the smartest person I talked to on this entire trip, which is really scary. Now, my friend and I weren't actually able to get into the rally, not because we were Democrats, but because apparently you had to line up outside in the 100-degree Arizona blazing sun for like 12 hours just to get a spot in the auditorium. So instead, we wandered around the perimeter, visiting the Trump merch kiosks and talking with the numerous other supporters who didn't make it inside. Now, I'd like to repeat that nothing that follows is exaggerated in the slightest, and I made sure to write down these quotes as soon as I heard them so that they would be verbatim. 2 seconds after I parked and opened the door, the first thing I heard was the middle of a conversation between a mother and what appeared to be her 4-year-old daughter. She said, "You know how I told you that we were on the good side because that other lady wants to murder babies?" "Yes, Mama," her daughter replied, as if this was something that she regularly heard. And it was at that moment that I knew that I was going to have an amazing time. As we approached one of the t-shirt vendors, a very large man walked up to the salesperson and asked, "Hi, do you have the 'I'm voting for the convicted felon' shirt in XXL?" Now, my friend was curious if the vendors were just in it for the money or if they genuinely supported Donald Trump. And the first guy she asked said this, "Well, a lot of people call Trump arrogant, and my wife calls me arrogant, so I like the guy." He then proceeded to explain that he hasn't been home to his wife in 2 months because he's been following the Trump campaign around the country to sell merch. The second vendor she asked was a total snowflake and got extremely mad, saying, "Now I'm feeling offended because I feel like you're asking me because I'm black." And I pointed out that my friend is half black. And he said, "Well, that doesn't even matter. So race card for me, but not for thee, I guess." But it was hilarious because that guy was wearing a shiny diamond T-Pain Trump hat in front of a rack of 100 other Trump hats and became completely indignant when asked not about a specific policy or anything particularly personal, but just why he supported Trump. So I asked if they had any Trump Pence merch, but for some reason they had gotten rid of all of it. and I thought that might have meant that they lit it all on fire or shot them like they did with Bud Light, but apparently they just sold them heavily discounted, which means despite the Mike Pence January 6th betrayal, the Trump supporters bought out the entire stock of Trump-Pence merch. Now, some of the merch was absolutely batshit, and I bought my 3 favorite things. 2 of them were fridge magnets. The first is Trump praying alongside various historical figures who would totally support him, including Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman. Seen here, 2 whole people apart from the leader of the Confederate Army, Robert E. Lee. And this painting is called Legacy of Hope by John McNaughton. And he has a few others, including Sean Hannity as Paul Revere, with bonus Paul Revere-inspired poem, where Sean Hannity is warning America about the Democrats, Jesus Christ delivering the Constitution, and fan art of the conservative Supreme Court justices. The other magnet was a wonderful scene depicting an angel deflecting the bullet away from Trump and into an innocent firefighter. It's labeled Divine Intervention. You'll notice that divine is spelled wrong. And of course, I had to get a Donald Trump duck for my duck collection.
You want to buy from China? That's great. Buy from China. Buy toys from China.
One of the tables was handing out free copies of a book called The Great Controversy. I asked what it was about, and they said, liberty and freedom. Anyway, it's an anti-Catholic book in 2 parts. One is the history of Protestants versus Catholics, and the other is a prophecy that says that the Roman Catholic Church will form an alliance with the US government and bring about the end times before the second coming of Christ. So, yeah.
Open your hands up, son.
I don't really want this.
Now, there were around 10 to 15 Democratic protesters waving around Harris Waltz signs, and every 5 seconds, these senior citizen protesters were subjected to the most vile things I have ever heard in real life. For example, completely unprompted, somebody walked up and said, "So you like young girls getting raped by illegal immigrants?" But don't worry, he also said, "Jesus loves you." One very insightful thing that I heard was some of the Trumples exiting the rally, and upon seeing the 10 or so protesters, said, "Oh, look at those poor people." And I realized that they genuinely viewed this as a reflection of support, where Trump has thousands and thousands of supporters filling this auditorium, and Kamala has almost none. To them, it's not just 10 old guys who are retired and wanted to have some fun interactions with Trump supporters. They actually think that this is the Democratic voter turnout, so no wonder most of them think the election was stolen. The speech was live streamed, so we were able to listen to it outside, but I thought it was mostly boring. I did notice that Trump kept calling Haitians in Ohio illegal, despite them being legal.
And illegal Haitians, and he came in, illegal Haitian migrants.
Oh, and JD Vance just admitted that he totally made all the stuff about Haitians up.
If I have to,
But it
if
wasn't
I have
just a
to
meme,
create stories so that the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, then that's what I'm going to do, Dan.
Nice argument, Senator. Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
And now they're getting bomb and shooting threats, and we have the stupid New York Post articles about how Haitian immigrants are getting in minor car crashes where no one is hurt. So that's cool. I can't wait to see more national news articles every time some redneck does donuts in the Circle K parking lot. Finally, it was on to the Blaire White event. For those of you who don't know, Blaire White is a trans conservative commentator and avid Trump supporter. She was joined by surprise guest Buck Angel, former trans porn star and now influencer. And there isn't much to say about their actual conversation. It was mostly just repeated, boring talking points about how the Democrats are trying to trans the kids, which I always found really strange coming from Blaire, who has said that she had dysphoria since childhood. But I did get to participate in the Q&A. First, I told Buck that I loved his work in Buckback Mountain, but my question was for Blaire, and it was essentially, I hang out in a lot of right-wing spaces, and I see many people who want to ban trans hormones and surgery, not just for minors, but for adults as well. To what extent would you be willing to support the Republican Party if it meant that you didn't get to live your identity the way you have, and others didn't either? I expected her to reject the hypothetical altogether, saying that hormones or plastic surgeries would never be banned for adults, but to my surprise, she and Buck Angel completely bit the bullet and said that they would be okay with eliminating all trans medical procedures to keep any children from being harmed. Harmed being in their view. And I don't necessarily believe them and think it's more of a fuck you, got mine mentality, but Jesus Christ, at least they're politically consistent. What was more interesting to me was talking with the Republican fans at the event. One of these Trump sycophants was actually in the VIP section of the rally that we had just been at. And I won't point out which of these people that they are, but just pick the craziest one and you're probably right. They were an avid COVID anti-vaxxer. And when I asked if they knew anyone who died from the vaccine, they mentioned that a friend who had been a pro-vax person had died suddenly in his home. And of course I asked, how did you know it was the vax? And our friend said, well, they wouldn't let me see the body or the death report because they thought I was a gold digger. And when I pressed further, they revealed that he was found in a pool of blood, he was an alcoholic, and he was 65 years old. Now, the blood was probably because he fell over, so whether that was a stroke, a heart attack, or just a slip in the shower, or just being fucking old, who knows? But it essentially came down to the vibes. They just knew it was the vaccine, which they probably reported in the VAERS system because that's how it works. Anyone can just make a report. Oh, and when asked about Trump's Operation Warp Speed and promotion of the vaccine, their only response was, Trump was just bamboozled into being pro-vaccine.
I recommend take the vaccines. I did it. It's good. Take the vaccines. But no, that's okay. That's all right.
If it were me, I wouldn't vote for the guy who I think can be easily deceived into killing millions of people. Now, according to everyone that I spoke to, illegal immigration and the border were their number one issue. And this really pissed me off because when I asked about the bipartisan border bill that Trump helped kill, not a single one of them had ever heard of it. It's one thing to be politically ignorant, and I think that most people on both sides don't know much policy. But holy shit, these people are politically active enough to follow commentators around the country and go to Trump events and have single issues that determine their votes in fucking swing states, and they know absolutely nothing about what is actually going on. It is mind-numbingly painful. Ugh. At the very least, Blaire let us hold our sign from the rally, even though the photographer totally cropped Buck Angel out of this photo for no reason. So what did I learn from all this? Well, number one, white nationalists are funnier and more intelligent than most of Trump's most die-hard fans, which is terrifying. Number two, Jordan Klepper videos at Trump rallies are not cherry-picked at all. Most of the people at the Trump rally are just like that. And finally, some of the most rabid political fans have absolutely no idea what they're talking about and vote based on vibes and drummed up outrage. Regardless, it was a genuinely fun experience, and if Trump wins because of the $10 in advertising from the merch that I paid for, I apologize to the country. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you liked my wacky adventure, please leave a like and comment if you want to see me do actual recordings at a Trump rally. If you're not a fan, I have a new video about a political video game in the works, which I hope you'll like, but I want to thank you all even harder because my channel has finally become monetized. So genuinely, thank you to everyone who stuck around and watched my stuff. If you want to support me making more stuff, I have a Patreon link in the description. Patreon.com/thesoypill. If you join, your name will be in my credits, and if you join Bigly, I'll even read your name aloud, so feel free to try and trick me into saying horrible things with your username.